Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. There's honestly been so much bad news for Russia the last 2 days, I'm struggling to keep up with it. Ukrainian drones sweep across Russia, military planes destroyed, Kyiv vows to increase the scale. Kyiv officials said 4 Ilyushin-76 transport aircraft were destroyed in what appears to be one of Ukraine's largest drone attacks on targets inside Russia to date. So 2 nights ago, the Ukrainians launched a massive coordinated drone attack on these 7 areas of Russia. Many of the drones were successfully intercepted by the Russians, but there's one area of the map where they didn't see it coming, and that would be up here, close to the Estonian border in the city of Pskov. Lots of Russian civilians filming videos in the city of the destruction from the airfield. This is something the Russians can't hide or deny. Ilyushin-76 cargo jet left burning from drone strike deep inside of Russia. Videos show multiple fires around a Russian airbase in the Pskov region. This is more than 370 miles, 500 kilometers away from the Ukrainian border. So there's a couple good videos, I'll link them down below. Russia did report there were no casualties or injuries, so let me show you some videos of the planes burning.
Горят 2 самолета на нашем аэропорту Псковском. Атака, говорят, дронов. НАТО нет, неизвестно. Находимся внутри борта. Сейчас пока ничего не наблюдаем, кроме задымления. Как понял?
Bravo! Each one of these aircraft costs about $86 million. So if 4 were destroyed and 2 more were damaged, Russia just lost about $500 million worth of aircraft. Here's probably the best video of a close-up of one of these Ilyushin-76 heavy transport aircraft burning.
Нихуя я успел спрятаться, я услышал вот эту хуйню, блядь. Пизда.
Wow. We do have satellite images. It was kind of cloudy, but it is apparent that you can see damage to the fuselage of several of the planes. Here are, for example, the firefighters who arrived at the jet in order to put out the flames. So these planes were parked out in the open because Russia thought this airfield was perfectly safe. They did not imagine a scenario where Ukraine would be able to successfully fly drones from their territory to this airbase near Estonia, which is leading to some conspiracy theories. Were these drones launched from the Baltics? Did these drones cross over Belarus and Belarus failed to shoot them down? Or are there Russian partisans inside the country launching these drones from a closer distance? One person who is really upset is Solovyev. Check out his attitude on his broadcast from yesterday.
Что происходит? Что происходит? Мы не знаем, откуда вылетают беспилотники? Что происходит? Мы не понимаем, где идет производство или доставка и накопление, места запусков. Но если мы с беспилотниками не можем справиться, как мы будем с F-16 справиться?
You just gave away the game, Solovyev. If we can't deal with drones, how are we going to deal with F-16s? I don't understand why he's wearing a tracksuit that says CCCP on it. I'm not sure if he's just being a cheerleader for the Chinese Central Committee of the Communist Party, or if this is some kind of vintage outfit to appeal to people who miss the Soviet Union. But Solovyev did continue on his broadcast, and this is what he has to say. Massive drone attack on Russian objects. What happened in Pskov? Let's break this situation down into a series of obvious questions. The NATO border is close by. Where was the drone launched from? From Ukraine? Doubtful. From the Baltics? If so, the Baltic states must be destroyed, wiped off the map. Not from the Baltics? Diversion and reconnaissance group? Did it come from Baltic territory? Still, we need to hit the Baltics with vengeance. If it came from there, and then went back there, then it did it without being noticed, sneaking in everything it needed. I'm sure the competent authorities are already working, but why are they working after, but not before? It means that they lack strength, means, authority. Free the hands of law enforcement bodies and security services. Finally, recreate SMERSH. The SMERSH was a Soviet counterintelligence agency and military organization established to combat espionage, sabotage, and counterintelligence activities. If the attack was carried out from the territory of NATO countries, it is a declaration of war against Russia by NATO. This means the response must be immediate, including nuclear weapons. We have talked about this many times, numerous times. So the Russians don't know. How is Ukraine doing this? Are these drones flying from Ukrainian territory? Are they being launched from the Baltics? Is this some kind of infiltration group getting the drones across the border to launch them closer? I'm going to say with 100% certainty they're not being launched from the Baltics. NATO wouldn't allow this. They're doing everything they can to prevent a wider war. So it's either the drones are being launched from inside Ukraine, or the Ukrainians are getting them across the border, and then sleeper cells or partisans in the country are then carrying out the drone attacks. But how does Russia stop this? And the answer is they can't. So here's the map showing all the aerial drone attacks and sea drone attacks to date. Ukraine has been advertising that they're increasing production. They're increasing their level of sophistication. And that these drone attacks, especially on Moscow and valid military targets, probably within 500, 600, 700 kilometers, Ukraine's going to keep going for them every single day until Russia gives up on this war and goes back to their own territory. Ukraine also has a flawless new long-range missile. Ukraine claimed that the destruction of the Russian S-400 missile complex, this happened last week in Crimea. They're now revealing what did this. Ukraine is using land attack variant of the Neptune anti-ship missile. The modified Neptune anti-ship missile gives Ukraine its longest range and hardest hitting locally made weapon, which has big impacts. So it's orange. And if Ukraine is domestically producing this Neptune missile itself, it can use it on the territories of Russia. It might be holding back at the moment, just using it on the occupied territories, especially Crimea, but if Ukraine's making it themselves, they can use it on the territory of Russia. So this potentially might be a video of this new domestically made long-range Ukrainian missile. You can't really see anything, but you can hear it. This video was taken by a resident in the occupied territory of Crimea. Let me read you this tweet from Yaroslav. A new wave of Ukrainian drone and missile strikes on targets in Russia. You know what's amazing? The fact that Russia, pretending that all is going according to plan, still refuses to warn its citizens and soldiers with air raid sirens. Ukrainian drones and missiles are striking Russian targets without anyone being warned. Russia refuses to have a drone or missile alert system on their own territory. They continue to pretend like Ukraine doesn't have this capability and all this stuff being blown up and set on fire isn't a big deal. Russia refuses to protect their own people, protect their own soldiers and military assets by having an early warning or air raid system. Incredible. But the Russians feel like they have to do something in response. 2 dead in Kyiv after most powerful Russian attack in months. More than 20 missiles and drones were intercepted by Ukrainian air defenses, but falling debris killed 2 men and injured another. Russia doesn't have missiles to spare. They can't do an attack like this every single night. When Ukraine kicked off their counteroffensive 2 months ago, they got pretty aggressive, but those missile and drone attacks gradually declined. However, given the horrific losses that Russia has been experiencing, especially the last week, they decided to launch this massive drone and missile attack. And they did successfully hit something. They hit a supermarket. So here's the video. I'll link it down below. As you can see, this is just a civilian grocery store in the heart of Kyiv. And Russia successfully launched a $1 million missile to put a hole in the roof of this supermarket. Every time I see one of these videos, I'm just bewildered and horrified. This is terrible, but every time it demonstrates the incompetence of the Russian military, while Ukraine is going after valid, high-value military targets. The Russians continue to bomb concert halls, drama theaters, supermarkets, and schools. This is a report from UNICEF. 1,300 Ukrainian schools have been destroyed since Russia's full-scale invasion. This is part of Russia's plan for genocide, stop the Ukrainian people from teaching their children their own history, their own culture, their own language. It's no accident that 1,300 schools have been destroyed by the Russians. So this is where we are. Because it's the fall and kids are going back to school, Ukraine has been forced to start constructing classrooms in metro stops in Kharkiv. It's the only way to protect their children and get kids back in school, learning, continuing their education. Schools in the metro stop. So let's check in on the front lines, and the Russians are getting their asses kicked in Zaporizhia. Ukraine has breached the first Russian main defense line, also known as the Solovyev line, and is heading in the direction of Verbova. So 2 months ago, you could call this the zero line, where the front was at the beginning of the summer. This red line right here is Russia's official first defense line. And within 2 days, Ukraine captured about 6 kilometers of trench networks, mostly because they're not being properly manned by the Russians. So when we zoom in on the map, Ukraine is focusing on the salient, trying to get as deep as they can. We can turn on the defense fortifications, and here it is. This right here was supposed to be Russia's first defense line, and as you can see, it's now in a gray area. So the Ukrainians have made a breakthrough, easily crossing this trench network. They're working on this one now, heading towards the village of Verbova. And I didn't think they were going to do this. It seemed logical that this village down here, Novoprokopivka, was the next ideal target. But Russia flooded about a couple thousand soldiers into this village, 1 to hold it, and 2 to potentially counterattack and retake Robotyne. So the Ukrainians said fine, and they headed towards the village of Verbova. So this is official from the Institute of Study of Warfare. Russian operations are limited by a lack of infantry. Russia now lacks the elite infantry units it once relied on to conduct large-scale offensives in Ukraine. According to the ISW, the Russian military has been rapidly redeploying elite airborne units in frontline regions where Ukrainian counteroffensive troops are concentrated. So most of Russia's soldiers are garbage. They're conscripts and mobilized men, prisoners. So Russia redeploys and moves around their best forces. But they're kind of running out of these guys. They've been taking horrific losses. So more than likely, once Russia gets through these regional elections on September 10th, they are going to announce another round of mass mobilization, try and grab another 300,000 Russian men to send them to Ukraine to die. Also from the Institute of Study of Warfare, Russian Defense Ministry is limiting coverage of the war in Ukraine. The Russian Defense Ministry has changed its reporting system to limit the amount of information it releases about the war in Ukraine. That's because the war is not going well. And apparently the thing you do in Russia when things aren't going well is you just don't talk about them. Kind of hard to do when you're about to announce another wave of mass mobilization. Let's check in on Girkin. I really miss this guy. Russian court rejects Girkin's appeal for a pre-trial release. Girkin, if you remember, is the ultra-nationalist. He's not a good guy, but he was a critic of Prigozhin, for one, but also a critic of the regular Russian military, and eventually started calling Putin Grandpa, the old man who couldn't get the job done, and Putin needed to step down. That got him arrested. More than likely, the plan with this guy is just hold him until people forget about him, and then have him mysteriously die in prison. But he does have a court date set for September 18th, and this hearing was to deny him the ability to post bail and get out of jail before his court date. And Girkin's wife posted on Telegram that she's concerned about her husband because he was transported in the same vehicle as Ukrainian saboteurs. The lawyer said that during the process of bringing Igor from the jail to the courthouse, he was in a paddy wagon with Ukrainian citizens accused of war crimes in Mariupol. I believe that this type of practice poses a potential threat to my husband. I regard this as criminal negligence of the leaders of the convoy service. So who knows? Maybe that's Russia's plan to get rid of Girkin. Just put him in a cell with Ukrainians who hate the Russians. Ukrainians from the Donbass region who know exactly who Girkin is, and they're not too fond of his previous work. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. The United States announced their latest security assistance package worth $250 million. Nothing groundbreaking here, but the usual good stuff. HIMARS ammunition, artillery rounds, probably more cluster munitions, and some javelins. Final couple feel-good clips. When the air raid siren went off in Kyiv the other night, this woman seized on the opportunity.
Russia, no red, my left, no sleeping. You own your day, it's so screaming around like no, thank you.
For those that don't know the song, this is Bad Guy by Billie Eilish. Let's see if the YouTube censors can tell this is copyrighted material, and maybe I'll have to mute that. Final clip is incredible. I really want to share this with you guys. It's a Ukrainian woman singing their national anthem with her two dogs. That's too precious. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.